Hey, welcome Possibility Seekers to the Art of the Possible. This week we've got a very special guest, Mr. Aidan Hughes. We're going to be talking about all things automotive. For those of you who've always dreamed of a prestige car but not quite sure how to buy one, or a little bit nervous walking into a car yard or selling your own car, well, we've got a guy who can reveal all the secrets that you need to know, and also the pitfalls. And we were chatting a little bit offline, and I've had a few cars over the years, but even I learned some great things. So welcome, Aidan, to the podcast. How are you?
Good, thanks, Rolf. How are you?
Yeah, excellent, mate. Let's learn a little bit about Aidan Hughes and cars. How did you get into cars? What interests you about cars?
Oh, geez. I probably started when I was pretty much born. So my dad owned a performance shop at the time from about 95. So I was born in 97. So he'd owned it for about 2 years before me. And then, all my memories that I can remember were just hanging around him in the shop, hanging around cars, sitting in cars, going for drives with guys that had fast cars.
Right. And just got into the whole culture.
Reading Street Machine magazines. So.
And then you've obviously then got a big passion for cars. And then when did you move into car sales?
So I started off when I was about 16. I started actually washing cars at a car yard in just like a local area. And then I was just washing the cars on Saturdays for the guys that were just on the yard, tire shine them, clean them up, vacuum them, a little bit like that. And then, they just talking to me. They used to teach me things. There was one guy that was a bit older. He used to just, take me around, drag me around when I was free, show me like what to say, what to do, stuff like that. He'd take me on test drives.
On-the-job training.
Yeah, so just a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
And then after I finished school, I got a job down at, Volkswagen dealership. So, so then I started from there and just...
went on kept from going. Because I think one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast specifically is because you have a passion for cars. And as you know, I've bought and sold a number of cars over the years. And it's just surprising today, even in some of the best prestige dealerships, there's a lot of salespeople there. And I wouldn't necessarily say they're passionate about what they're selling. Some of them they're just selling a product. They really could be selling anything. They don't really have the interest in it. And I think some of the cars, especially when you talk about some of the modified cars, prestige cars, or sort of more interesting cars, you're really wanting to talk to someone who shares your passion. Do you find that?
Definitely.
And I find there's a lot of salespeople who will sell you a car, but they don't really know terribly much about the car, which is kind of the reason I kind of always admired your interest and passion for it. And for those of you who are listening, Aidan came around in a late model Volkswagen to our house, and I was looking at the car, and he said, and he just was able to tell me everything about the car. I had a few questions on it. It wasn't there to sell it to me. It was actually going out with my oldest son. But he was able to tell me straight away. You can just tell there's someone has an interest in it and an interest in what it does, as opposed to reading the product brochure or downloading something off the web. So all credit to you.
Thanks,
what about what's your first car you had?
Oh, and still got the Toyota 86, 2014 model.
86. Now, I was going to make it. So I know about this car, ladies and gentlemen. We'll put a pickup of the car, but I was going to say, what are you driving now? But you can't really drive this car very far. Tell people about this 86 of yours.
Well, I don't know if your older son told you about what happened the other night with it, but
no,
to give you an example of how badly it is to drive, I ended up buckling both front fenders and bent them and cracked them. So after a fair bit of money being spent and new paint and all the fenders being modified and stuff like that, I've just broken it all. So
it's a real show car, isn't it? I mean, it's a really amazing show car. It's been highly modified and bent and twisted and exhaust routed, but it is. I love the car. I think it's just such a statement, that you make, and it's a passion, isn't it, of yours? Yeah. And so I'm sorry to hear about the damage to the baby that's happened. What's a dream car for you though?
Funnily enough, so like reiterating where I started when I was little, there was a guy that my dad used to hang around with, had a 57 Chevy Bel Air. Nice red one, had big tubs in it, 15s by 15s, 4-link, 9-inch diff, all this sort of stuff. And it was a 9-second car. This is like, it would have been 2002, 2003.
So let's take it back a few seconds here.
Sorry.
So when you say tubs, you mean?
So the rear end of the car where the wheels sit have been cut out and widened. And then what the wheels stick to, so your axle and your diff, have been shortened to fit really wide wheels and really big tyres into it. So it gets more grip.
And 9
makes
seconds?
It fast. 9 seconds means that, so your your standard quick car will probably do a 14, 15 second quarter mile.
So that's a quarter mile. And,
Yeah.
Quarter mile in the old school.
9 seconds
and 9
is very
seconds.
quick.
Yeah. Usually 9 seconds is how long it takes to start some cars, but we just thought we'd just clarify what that was. So that's interesting. Now, as you worked across a few of these dealerships, let's talk about some of the cars that are there and how people go to buy a car. So when someone comes in to buy a new car or even a prestige used car, which you focus on, what are some of the pitfalls you see that when they come in to buy it? What are some of the things that they should be researching for or they just don't do when they come in?
Yeah, no, I'd say it's a little bit harder for me to say that in terms of like used cars, because most of the time nowadays, thanks to the internet, and the way that everything works now, with a lot more people know what they're doing online and stuff like that as well.
Makes it more,
well informed. Yeah, makes it a lot easier for used cars. So, sorry, when they come in to look at a car, they pretty much know what they're looking at.
Right.
85% of the time, they know what model, what color, what features they want on the car.
Yep.
I'd say more so new cars struggle still a fair bit because you get the people that are coming in that, they'll just say, I want a small car that's fuel efficient. Well, most brands, especially like Toyota, will have,
Big
10
range.
different cars,
Yeah.
that will fit into that category.
Right.
Volkswagen, not so much. But yeah, I just find that, some people, used cars especially, more informed of what they're looking at.
Right.
Exactly, which makes it a lot easier for us that are used car salesmen.
Yeah, it does. Now, but we were talking about a pitfall there, which I wasn't across, which is from the dealership side sometimes, there's that when you trade a car or you have a car that you're going to put on the used car lot, when you're listing it, because everything's online, quite often there's so many variations of that particular model. So occasionally, we wouldn't say it's common, but occasionally, as you were telling me, and I've got experience of this, is that with all good intentions, the seller, the salesperson in the dealership has selected slightly the wrong model.
Yep.
And so the model listing that goes on car sales or one of the sites could actually be incorrect.
Yeah. Just depend. Always look at the photos.
So your recommendation there is if you're looking at the photos, which people mostly go to, but when they look at the description of the car, when they go and see the car, it's pretty important to actually just double check. And we were talking about some examples. Some have been listed as diesels when they in fact were petrol. Some were listed as petrol where in fact they were diesels. Yeah. I had one experience of a car dealer thought he was buying himself. He saw this car come in. He thought it was a great price. It was a Mercedes, and it was listed as a Mercedes compressor. And he snapped it up really quickly. Then realised that unfortunately it wasn't actually a compressor, which wasn't actually supercharged.
Yep.
As well. So that can happen, can't it? So that's maybe one thing that people need to have a look at.
Yeah, there's a couple of instances where you get that every now and then. Like we've had a situation where a new car salesman brings in a trade-in, was brought in as a petrol, turned out to be diesel, because when you're putting in a car in as a trade-in, and I find this as well, it sort of helps when you actually know about cars, when you're trying to sell cars, because it's all this little back-end stuff that helps too.
Right.
And when you've got someone that's not really focusing, they'll accidentally pick a model because, like we said earlier, Holden Commodores. Pick any year, you got like 40 different models.
Right.
Different engines, all that sort of stuff. So I accidentally picked the wrong one. And then all of a sudden it goes to our back-end system. We'll come up onto our, on our ad or whatnot,
right,
as the wrong car.
Yeah.
And then it takes sometimes the salesman to point it out in the yard later on that it wasn't actually that, wasn't actually a petrol or wasn't actually, what model that they've picked. So
another thing you were telling me which surprised me, but I'm going to take your word for it, is that quite often, and especially more private than dealer, but if you were buying privately, which some people do, is that often the kilometres in the photograph don't match the kilometres on the car. That seems strange, but it can be out by quite a while. I can imagine like 500k or 300 for the distance you're selling the car. But some people are quite like 10,000 kilometres out.
Yeah, we've had instances like we were looking at a car that was an Audi A4.
Right.
It was about 25,000 k's off of what the photos were stating.
Wow.
Like more than what the guy had advertised. So.
As you were saying, I'm reflecting back. I once had the experience. I think this is where it may have come from. I had an experience with buying a motorcycle, and it didn't match when I saw the photos. When I actually saw it, it didn't match. And what I'd realised was that the guy really didn't know how to use his kind of iPhone or have a camera, so he uploaded the photos that he bought it with. So the photos that when he originally bought it. 3 or 4 years ago, he used those photos and uploaded them again. Not because he was trying to be manipulative, he just didn't have anyone, didn't have a photographer, he was a really bad photographer, so he thought, well, I've got the last ones. So the Ks were like a lot lower than what I thought, and I'm like, hang on, how does this match? Unless he was honest enough to go, oh, gee, I really should have changed that. But so that's another example when you're out there, just because the K's in the photograph, you can jump onto it. Check the K's also, I guess, in what they've got written up there as well, and when you actually get to have a look at it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some people when they come to buy, a prestige car. Or trade in. I think let's talk about trade-ins, because some of the bugbears you hear in the industry is, took my car in, really wanted this car, and I was going to trade mine in, but they gave me this really, really shocking price. Like, I just embarrassing. I paid X amount for it when it was new, and now they're giving me like a third. So I listened to that, but I actually think, like most things in life, there's two sides to a story. Yeah. So give me some input from yourselves, from a dealer perspective, of when you're doing the price, why do people make that error so much?
Well, you always sort of got to remember as well, when you are looking on car sales, it's an asking price. It's not what they're selling for.
Yes.
When we're trading a car, we have all other costs that got to come into it. We got to charge for what we got to cop: the stamp duty, the GST, the transfers, the detailing, the roadworthy, just on the basis of getting the car into our stock.
Yeah.
Then there's all the things
and that's just, I cut you off there because there's a great point you made then. So when you're trading, so when someone privately is trading their car, often forget that when the dealer has to resell it, the dealer has to include GST on top of that, don't they? So or include the price, I should say. Yeah. So that's a fair chunk, and then there's other duties and charges that you've got. So you've got that before. That's even assuming the car's in great condition.
Yeah, as well. You always got to, a lot of cars are traded because they have, big service coming up. They have 4 tyres that need to be changed. Their brakes are making noises, things like that. So, there are a lot of costs that you might be saving trading your car, but we're actually copping.
Someone has to, and especially, and you have to give a warranty as well, even on a second-hand car. Yep. You have to do that. So there's a lot of factors that go in on the dealer side. Then, of course, you've got to make a margin because they've got to pay all those expensive sales guys like you, to run the business as well, because there's yard storage and all the other things that be there. And another thing that I think that people don't realise is when they buy a new car, you were talking to me about when someone buys a new car, there's the price they pay for the car, but they also pay a whole bunch of taxes on that car.
Yeah, yep. So like when you're purchasing a, more expensive car, I can't remember what the threshold is now, but you've got luxury car tax.
Yeah, it's over 55,000, I think it is.
Yeah, I think they dropped it again. So it used to be 65 or whatever, and they've dropped it again, something like that. But yeah, you've got to, when
you pay
purchase,
that, when you
purchase that car brand new, you've copped all that tax.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And then when you're trading in the car, well, that money's not,
right.
The car wasn't technically worth that amount when you've bought the car because that's going to the government. That's not going to anyone else.
And so people often say that when you buy a new car, it's worth 10% less as soon as you drive off the lot.
Yeah.
Well, that's literally the tax.
Yeah.
And now it's second hand, so you can probably add another 15% or take another 5%. So it's 15% even if you kind of drove it, reversed it back in.
Exactly that.
That's right. So you're 15% down. So, so I think that's an interesting one as well. People often have a false thing. I paid X amount for it. Now it's worth. Well, actually, there's a bunch of taxes on the trade in, and plus what you paid at the front end on it. So I want to run this scenario by you. I was many years ago, probably around your age. A really wealthy guy, and he had some fantastic cars. He had a beautiful Porsche 993. He had an Aston Martin. And one of the things he said, I always buy really good second-hand Prestige, rather than a new sort of general model. Might be a sort of Holden, a Ford, or a Toyota, or something like that. He said, I tend to buy a second-hand, really good Prestige because he felt that the build quality was better and they would last longer and they would stay. Their value was better. What are your thoughts on sort of buying second-hand Prestige versus buying, say, new, kind of mid-road?
For how it is at the moment, with how it is here, I'd definitely all day long buy a second-hand one. Demo or ex-head office car.
Right.
Like that's what I sell.
Yeah.
So
Demo head office is good because it's on a few Ks, under 10,000 usually, isn't it?
Yeah. So the difference between a demonstrator vehicle and an ex-head office car or a used car is that the demonstrator was owned by the dealership. So an ex-head office car owned by head office, so
Right.
of say Volkswagen or Toyota or wherever. So
Okay.
you save the taxes sometimes, depending how expensive the car is. You save the the on the road type stuff that you'd usually get hit with once you've bought a brand new car.
Right.
You save that little chunk of money.
Yeah.
Ex-head office cars will actually usually be cheaper than a demo as well.
Right.
Just for some reason that we just get them cheaper.
Right.
Yeah,
Maybe they might have come on earlier at a lower price or something. Yeah. Okay.
Things like that. Depends how much we pick them up for. Things like that. So. Yeah, it's
and
always...
the warranty stays the same on those, isn't it? It's usually a full warranty on a kind of a demo head office car.
So like right now, if you buy a brand new Volkswagen, say, you get a 5-year warranty. If you buy a demonstrator Volkswagen, you get the balance of a 5-year, and the same with the ex-head office car, you get the balance of as well. So yeah, it's just the only difference is it was owned by someone, you know what I mean? Yeah.
So tell us about, we were talking a little bit about the people who buy cars. So we were talking about the different generations, because we were talking about Generation Z, which you are. I'm Generation X, but we were talking about some of the older Generation X and baby boomers.
A little bit.
I think your age group you were talking to me about was around sort of that 45 to 55, and they buy differently than the millennials. What difference have you found?
I find that they're still a little bit more, a little bit nervous to come in, a little bit nervous to talk to you. They sort of want to speed things up. They only want information. They're still a bit weary of car salesmen and women, unfortunately. I just think that people between the ages of about 18 to 25, a bit more open-minded, sort of know that, we're not here to bite.
Right.
You know what I mean? We're normal people. It's just a job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas I still think the between probably 45 to 55 are a little bit, weary of us and think that we're out to rip them off. Which
I find that really strange, because it's pretty. Look, if you do your research and you're using your online and all the tools that are accessible and available to you now, it's very much a level playing field, as you were saying earlier. That you really, it's very transparent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I don't think I'd probably say back to you is that particular age group probably isn't as internet savvy as they could be. And so do you find that they actually don't know really how to use car sales and all the tools are there to their advantage?
Yeah, no, some of them. It depends, it depends on areas and stuff like that they come from as well.
Oh, okay.
That's rather dependent as well. But no, look, I just say I think it's just from the past, when they were younger buying cars in the 90s or whatnot. The stories that I've heard about what car salesmen used to do would probably put you off.
Yeah, so they tend to go around a few dealerships and want to double check, triple check. In fact, it reminds me of a good friend of mine, and he was buying his first prestige car, a Mercedes, and I think he did the Mercedes-Benz dealer Grand Prix. He was going to everyone and just double checking, and he just wanted to touch and feel. And it was a huge purchase for him. It was a kind of a dream car for him. So so I think there's a bit of that. Whereas younger generation, also I think because they're a little more informed, and they also, from my view, a lot of you comment on this one, they don't see it as their kind of only car. They're going to go and buy the car, come out of the car, get a different type of phone, trade a phone, that type of thing.
Yeah, sort of thing. Yeah. Which is, it's sort of good. They've got that little bit more of an open mind. They want to change cars a little bit more quicker, things like that. And they trust us as well, which is good. They've looked on reviews and things. I find like Google reviews for dealerships is a very big part of the way that people go about, which dealership to go to and, because everyone's looking for good customer service.
Sure.
So that's become a big part as well. Facebook reviews as well, things like that. So, yeah.
Now, we were talking about, you and I have had a bit of experience in the US. We've both, been there, and we naturally, because we like the cars, we've gone to dealerships, and I've done it because I've got clients in the business as well. Yeah. But the one big thing that I still think in the US and in Europe as well, I mean, the amount of vehicles financed is like double than Australia. But it seems to be a very much, you really struggle to find the price of the car in the US or the UK. It's just per week or per month. Yeah. Is that something you found when you were over there as well?
Yeah, very much so. So I had a buddy of mine that was actually working at a Toyota dealership. He was a reconditioner manager.
Right.
So when they get trade-ins in, he managed, where they go, what they do, things like that.
Right.
But so he used to take me around through the dealerships, and I actually hung out with one of the managers there. We went out clubbing and stuff one night. Right. Anyway.
It's a very PG show, this one.
Yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, so we... he was showing me through the dealerships and stuff like that, and I did the same thing as what you were talking about earlier. I was looking at cars, looking at the price, and going, $190 a week. Well, geez, this is cheap,
Right,
you know,
right.
sort of thing. But they don't have a full price of a car because it's literally, you know, you go in there, you buy it, you drive it for 3 years, you get a new one. Like
Right.
that's just what they do. Same with Europe.
So the culture's like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's a very big cultural shift from Australia, which I think we're doing more financing here.
Yeah.
And we're seeing some successful programs like Mercedes-Benz Agility in terms of a fixed cost when you that they'll pay fixed cost or fixed price, I guess.
Yeah.
When you trade it back in X amount of time,
Guaranteed
that's kind
future
of
value sort of
and I
stuff.
think there's one or two doing that, but it's not a common thing.
Yeah.
There's still this culture of I want to buy it or pay it out or it's interesting, isn't it?
It's like Aussies still have this sort of mentality of, you know, if you're financing it, you don't own it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Once you've
own your own
paid in
house.
cash or, you know, you've paid it off, you own it then.
Right.
But it's just like, what's the point of owning a car that you're going to pay off in 7 years? It's not worth anything anymore and you got to get a new one.
It's going down in value.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. I think that's a really interesting point. And for you, have you noticed in any trends? Have you had more hybrids coming through, or people requesting hybrids or electric cars? Is that starting to bubble up a little bit?
Electric cars, well, the biggest trend I've noticed, probably for what it is right now, is that diesels have just fallen off.
So diesel versus petrol. So people are
Yeah.
wanting. So we had that because we had this swing to diesel, didn't we? Maybe
Yeah.
10 years ago. Last 10 years has been you've got to do diesel because it's lower price and it's really more, it's more cost effective. And there was the Golf diesel. Everyone had a
everyone
diesel,
was coming
right?
out with a diesel, you know, and you're
think,
starting to get smaller and smaller cars with, you know, smaller and smaller diesel
Which
motors.
was a UK thing too. I mean, the UK had lots and lots of diesels now, and so now you're seeing, and I believe Audi are actually stopping making diesels.
Yeah,
I
yep,
believe that. But even in the used car market, you're seeing people really wanting to go for petrol. What's driving that? Do you think?
I'd just say it's the mentality of things, you know, with all the whole situation which happened with Volkswagen, and then just, you know, just spiraled down from there.
Right. People are wanting to feel
a lot of
it
people
more.
are just more like, oh geez, you know, no one's buying them, you know, or, you know, no one's making them anymore. So
Right.
that's it. We'll just go to a petrol.
Yeah.
I don't think it's converted all the way yet to hybrids and electric cars yet,
Right.
just because of our infrastructure and the way it is here at the moment.
Yes.
But yeah, I'd say a lot more have converted to petrol or back to petrol,
Right.
which is, you know, it's a little bit odd because I'd even say when I first started at Volkswagen, I would have said our used car yard, we only had 20 cars at the time, but probably 15 of them were diesels.
Wow. Yeah.
And that was only 4 years ago.
Yeah,
You know,
now that's
now
swung.
I've got 85 cars and I'd say probably 75 to almost 80 of them are petrol.
Right. And are people buying smaller cars, or is there still more SUVs being sold?
Yeah,
What do you
SUVs
see?
sedans have dropped off. Sedans and wagons are absolutely, other than yourself, Rob, probably no one else has one.
I'm the only guy with a wagon, is that right? Yeah. Well, you know what? To my defence, I moved to the wagon from a four-wheel drive because I felt I just didn't need the four-wheel drive size anymore and all the cost that goes with it. But it's actually hard to buy a wagon.
Yeah,
as well,
very
as
much
you would
so.
know,
Hard
isn't
to
it?
come
It's
across them.
actually hard to buy, you know, and so it's to actually get a wagon these days. You have to really be seriously searching, to be honest with you, to get them. But I have noticed that as well. But for us, you know, we decided that we didn't need the size of the four-wheel drive, or at least two of them. So we went to the station wagon. So are people buying? What about on the high performance side? You're seeing people buying in terms of the high performance for you guys that are probably around the kind of the high end GTIs and that type of thing. Do they
they're
still sell well?
Very popular still, especially with the P-platers. You know, especially with, you know, now that certain models of Golf Rs and stuff like that are P-plate legal, or legal for the younger ones. You know, it's become a lot more popular.
Now, how does that work? Because I get confused. I see some cars that,
the
like a
whole
Golf
P-plate
R
thing?
is a P-plate legal some years, and other ones aren't. But isn't it the same car?
To be honest with you, some say it's on power to weight. I still think it's just they've put a whole bunch of cars on a dartboard and thrown a dart at it. Because you've got models like the WRX where you can drive the auto but not the manual on your P-plates.
Right.
Same power, same weight,
Yeah.
same everything. What's the difference?
So again,
You know?
that's a good trap for young players, especially parents. I've actually seen this happen. Even just 2 weeks ago, I was talking to a dealer, and they just taken back a car because the parents had done a wonderful thing, and their kid had gone through uni, and they really wanted to celebrate that, and they bought him this fantastic car. And they did the big reveal, and the son said, "Gee, Mum and Dad, thanks so much, but I can't drive this. It's actually, and they hadn't looked. They hadn't looked on the list. I think the Vic Roads list. They'd made an assumption. I think you need to check that because, as you said, it does look like a dartboard sometimes, doesn't it?
Some of the choices of cars, like certain older models of GDIs and things as well. You can't drive, but a year later you can drive it. It's still the same car, still the same engine. It's just some you can obviously think, like you don't want your kid driving a V8, for the first year. So it's reasonable, but
you'll love this. I was with a very old friend of mine. I hadn't seen him for a long time, and he lives in Queensland, and he was showing me his garage, which is just sensational. And I said to him, "Oh, what's under the cover there?" It was in this photo of one of his motorcycles. What's under the cover? He goes, "Oh, that's a 928 Porsche." So,
very nice.
Yeah, very nice. I said, I didn't know you had that. And he goes, "Yeah, no, I bought it for my 17-year-old to learn to drive." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, it's the auto." But I was with him through it, but I wasn't going to let him. Once he got his license, I wanted him on a manual, and he couldn't drive that. But I still, as a 17-year-old, learning to drive a 928 S Porsche. Very comfortable, good brakes, probably more safe than you think, And I think you and I know they were a great buy for a while. I think everyone's realised how good a car they are and that they've gone up. Yeah. But you don't want someone driving a V8 But even something like some of those turbos that are out there. As you said, a WRX is a manual. Oh no, you can't. Auto. Yeah. Gee, that's interesting. I wasn't aware of that one. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
How do you keep up to date with all the trends that are going on in the market, in the industry? What do you guys do?
I'd say it's probably easier for me because I'm already sort of in the car scene, so I sort of see and know what's already happening anyhow. But I do read a lot on car sales,
right?
Articles and things like that. Try and keep up with magazines. I still read,
right?
Which no one really
very old school.
seems to have anymore, but I still like the old magazine every now and then. So
I'll keep that in mind for Christmas. Now, and on that too, one of the things I thought was interesting, and people might not know this, is that the car dealers themselves are often buying cars. So especially those who have got a very professional run used car centre as well as their new car. But you guys are often on the lookout for good cars, aren't you? Which surprised me. Definitely. So but not only is people walking in saying, "Hey, can you buy my car?" which you guys are up for the right type of car. Yeah. But you were telling me also that you guys actually search the car sales and the other online sites for good cars to put in your yard.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so if there's, certain clean cars out there, low Ks, reasonably priced, we're more than happy to try and make an offer and see if we can, get it for our yard and whatnot.
Right.
Even Facebook as well. I came across a GDI the other day that I thought might have been good. Guy wanted a little bit too much than what we were willing to pay, but
right.
But yeah, definitely.
So that's a market for people who are looking to sell their car, because it's always, because people do get nervous about selling. And look, you can sell on car sales or Gumtree or Facebook, things like that. But some people just don't want the people coming around to their house or get worried. So I think it's perfectly makes sense. So the real option is you don't have to do it. You can actually go down to a yard and even if you don't want to buy a new car, if your car is clean, it's in good, the Ks and all sort of stuff matches up. Who knows what might happen?
Yeah, like we had a gentleman last week come in with GDI, came past. He just goes, "Do you guys want to just buy it?" He had a figure in his mind that he thought was reasonable. We've been looking at car sales, looked around a little bit, looked at other car yards as well, what they were selling them for. We looked at the car, drove the car, looked at the books, made sure everything was correct, and gave him an offer and he took it. So
right.
Sometimes that makes it a lot easier than relying on people come around to your house. You don't know who's coming. You don't know who's got your phone number now. You don't know who's got your address now. It's, some people are still a little bit weary of that. So,
and I find older people as well, but also,
it's that 45 to 55 mark.
To get nervous. I tell you what, it must have been really bad in the 80s and 90s. All I can say, or the 70s or something, it was a really tough gig. But it is. But even so, these days, people have that kind of information when you're in break-in. So I can imagine that. So if someone, let's talk about that though, because I find generally people when they go to sell their car just actually don't know how to present it. I mean, some stuff that you and I we know because we've been doing it a while. But so if you are going to take your car around and show a dealer, what's some basic things they should do?
Please clean your car.
Please clean your car.
That's the biggest one. Take all your stuff that you've had left in the car for the last few years. Take it out.
Yep.
Yeah, just give it a quick wash.
All the McDonald's wrappers and stuff out. Yep.
Just spray it with a garden hose or something like that. Just do something that makes it a little bit cleaner.
But even getting it washed, even getting it someone to just quick wash?
I wouldn't say, pay a proper detailer to do a $800 job on it. Just even the guys that, wash cars underneath car parks and shopping centres and stuff like that, $100, $200, get them to give it a good clean inside and out for you. Take it round, because even though, look, a lot of dealers do say, like we often do say it, that you're not going to get thousands of dollars more for your car being clean. It helps out, presents it better. We think that you've treated the car better, because if you saw our cars on the yard and they were filthy and leaves were inside it and stuff like that, you'd go, well, why do they treat a car like this? You always got to think, if our cars are presented well and you're trying to trade a car and you're trying to get absolute best money for it, you should present your car well as well.
No, I agree. I think that's a great point. And also just having all your books, the service books and all the things ready to go.
Even try and bring your spare key as well. It's always good, because the amount of times that we trade cars that, they come in, they say, I have a spare key, I have a spare key. Next week you pick up your brand new car and we go, well, where's your spare key? And it's like, I'll get it when I get home. I never see you again.
Never see you,
So.
And the other thing is, sometimes when you go to trade a car, and you guys are moving pretty quickly, you're in the business. I mean, I think it's been many times I've gone to trade and I've literally traded on the day. So I take my books, take the spare key, like you said, and the guys give you a price and I leave it there.
Yeah.
Because I'm either going to go and buy something else or something's been prepared for me, but you guys want to get it, you want to get it quickly, and you might have a buyer that's after, or you want to get it back on the lot, because that's what you guys do. So you turn them over quickly. So be prepared. So your manuals, clean the car, make it all washed, try and have it serviced. Obviously, if there's a service coming up, probably better to do it. Yeah. But just have all your paperwork and receipts and be ready to go.
Yeah. Just think of always how, if you're wanting to buy a car at a certain standard, sort of have your own car at that standard too, because you're sort of trying to sell it. So when you're trading,
the law of reciprocity. Isn't it? It's the law of reciprocity. Now, the other thing that I also found out talking to you offline was that you often source cars. So if you have someone come to you, so if you're out there and you're looking for a particular type of car, and let's say it's in your space, in the Volkswagen space, you either haven't got time or you haven't been able to find it yet. You're going along to a Volkswagen dealership and saying, hey guys, I'm looking for a 2017 Tiguan in this colour, and you guys can go and source, because your networks are pretty extensive.
Yeah. So I had this instance actually, well, technically today, but 4 weeks ago, a lady called up for a GDI Original, which is a 3-door manual little Golf, which is rather hard to come by. She called up 4 weeks asking for one. The day before she called up, I'd sold one that we had.
Oh, really?
So I kept a number in my little notepad that I have in my little book with people's names and numbers in them, and cars that they're looking to buy and things like that. We bought one yesterday from head office from Volkswagen Australia.
Right.
So I found her name in my little book. Scrolled back all those 4 weeks, found her name, called her up, go, hey, I've got one, sent her the photos of the car, and she bought it straight away over the phone.
Yeah, it's a great service people don't think about, because there's obviously makes it easy for you. Got a willing buyer there, someone who's keen. Exactly what they want. Right? As you said earlier, rather than can I have something that's low price for, or low cost to run, could be anything. Yeah.
If you're looking for a car that's a little bit more mainstream, but still sort of hard to find, like a car like that, like a GDI Original, we can try and source it for you if you're looking for a little bit of a unicorn, like a 996 turbo or something. It's a little bit hard.
It's a little bit hard to find, but even so, I understand that you're quite passionate about that. I know you're looking at me for this all the time. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
It's about time you bought one, Rob.
I know. I do like them. I do have a passion for the turbo, Aidan. That's absolutely true. And have you seen any other some of the other trends that are happening in the Australian market now? I'm fascinated with. We've got big cultural shifts here. We've got a lot of Australians, but we've also got huge people coming from China. We've got people from the subcontinent, all sorts of people here. So have you seen that too? So because their kids are getting older now as well. So has that changed much for you when you're selling, or is it pretty much?
Look, it's become a bit more of the norm, depending on what sort of brand you are as well. Obviously, Toyota had a lot more of the Indian and Sri Lankan sort of market. Right. Had a good grasp of that.
Right, interesting. Yeah.
Volkswagen's a little bit more, a little bit more mixed. You're actually finding a lot more, I don't know why, but the Asian market's coming into Volkswagen very heavily now. We've even hired, to be honest with you, a Chinese gentleman so that he speaks Mandarin, just to grab another grasp onto the Chinese market, because it's gotten so big now, especially in the area that we're in as well. It's a big part of our sales now. So
yes, I know Mercedes-Benz. As you know,
they always keep someone that speaks Mandarin there. Yeah,
and they're such good buyers. But I think that's the other thing is, that the global brands, drive consumer trends. And if you've grown up with it and you like them, you're going to go and see it.
Exactly.
We were in Hong Kong last year, and we couldn't believe the amount of Teslas that were in Hong Kong, because there was a couple of reasons. There was so many there, we decided to investigate it. And it turned out that there was just a really amazing rebate from the government on buying the electric car. That was one. Secondly, that they were investing heavily in charging stations.
Yeah.
And then third reason was that if you bought a luxury apartment over, I think it was over something like $500,000, you got a Tesla. Oh. So there were a number of property developers that were actually doing these developments, and they were putting the charging stations in the car parks, so these new new apartment blocks. And once you'd gone over a certain level or spent over a certain amount, you got a Tesla bundled in. It was quite amazing, but it was a really interesting way. But it was essentially the government was the one that was driving most of it. So you see these trends, and I'm seeing that here. So when people move out from Asia or they're used to something as well, and Mercedes is just enormous. AMG is a huge market as part of Mercedes. They want to do a similar thing when they come to Australia. Yeah,
exactly.
As well.
Funnily enough, like when I was at Mercedes-Benz, when I did my little stint there, because I did a lot of training and stuff like that.
Right.
And, I tried to do as much training as possible to learn about the car, because that was the first time selling new cars when I worked at Mercedes-Benz. So they actually have a production line in China for the Chinese market. Wow. Because for every 3 Mercedes-Benzes that are sold globally, 1 is sold to China.
That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, 33% of their market is Chinese now.
Well, their office in Shanghai, and if I told you that I went to the Mercedes-Benz dealership in Shanghai in the financial district, and the hours they run Saturday, Sunday, and it's 10 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Yeah, geez.
Including Sundays, because that's their market. Because the people who work are working incredibly long hours.
Yeah.
So you can't close it up on Saturday afternoon or on Sunday. It just doesn't work like that. So it was an incredible dealership.
I don't know if you noticed when you were in America as well. That was a big thing too that I picked on when I was over there. Is that they actually work night shifts? Oh, sorry, not night shifts. Sorry, they work shift works.
Right.
So, like a buddy of mine, he would say start at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Work till 4 in the afternoon.
And what roles he doing?
That was a salesman.
Sales guy.
Yeah.
So he's doing 7 till 4.
Yeah. Yep. Sometimes, and then other days he'd convert and go from 10 in the morning till 10 at night. Things like that. And then they work Monday to Sunday as well in the States now.
That's right.
So all their dealerships are open Monday to Sunday, and they've always got someone there, even at night time. So
it was interesting you should say that, because I spoke to some finance people in the American dealerships, and they work even longer hours, as you would know, because they've got to process all the finance. So they were working, and they were having shifts as well. They work through Saturday, Sunday, but there's an extra couple of hours for them, because they've got to do all the finance and the back checks and back to head office and the like. So it was very, very, very custom orientated. I think in Australia we're there, but we're just not as much in terms of that customer service side.
Yeah.
Just in terms of the hours and the way people are working and the changing nature of work as well. So I think that's interesting. So clearly you'll be on a 2 a.m. shift. You're probably going back to work after this.
Yeah, I've got to start again.
Hey, Aidan, that's been fantastic. Been really great to have you on. Been some great sort of secrets you've given me and all the audience out there. I hope you guys have been taking notes out there, because Aidan's given us some pure gold, and that you'll be able to afford your next prestige car and get a better price for the one you've already got now, mate. So thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you very much, Rob. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.